it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Matt Ohayon with you. It's another Friday closer to hockey season, another Friday deeper into the dog days of summer. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. We're also brought to you by Tibi beer. Tibi has launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer perfect for the hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, and 4% ABV per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in groceries and dépanneurs all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light, ultra refreshing. We're also brought to you by Playground. Play lucky numbers at Playground. Earn your entries daily and return every Sunday for a chance to win a share of the $15,000 in cash prizes with a $5,000 top prize. And on July 28th, one lucky winner will take home $10,000 at the $30,000 finale. Visit playground.ca for details. Brought to you also by Betway. Betway is a leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct and go with Betway. Go on betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. You must be 18 years or older and please play responsibly. Finally, we're also brought to you by sportsbuffshop.com. Shop all your sports licensed lifestyle apparel, including hoodies, caps, and tees of your favorite teams from all major leagues at sportsbuffshop.com. Use code SICK10 for 10% off all their items. All right, like I said, it's the dog days of summer. There's not much going on. One thing I can promise you is that Stu Cowan is here. He will be joining me. We won't spend 30 minutes or 45 minutes, however long this episode goes, on Rafaël Harvey-Pinard's broken leg. I promise you that. Don't worry. We're gonna be a little more creative than that. So let's bring him in. Stu, how we doing?
Better than Rafaël Harvey-Pinard.
Yeah.
They got a broken leg, out 4 months, had surgery yesterday. So it's another tough break for him.
Yeah, it's always tough to see that, especially, he's a guy it's so easy to root for because he's good chez nous. He works hard. He's come through the ranks, a late, kind of a late bloomer because he was drafted past the normal age of being drafted, 5th round pick. Called him Lavaliger was his nickname. Very, very tough break.
Yeah, I mean, during COVID, he was delivering pizzas for his family's pizza restaurant, Pizzeria Davis in Arvida. The good news is, he did get a 2-year, $2.2 million contract after that season when he had the 14 goals in 34 games, and the Habs called him up from Laval. So financially, that's the big boost, but I can just imagine what he must be feeling like today. And again, it's just this team is jinxed. They really, when it comes to injuries, Graham Lineban, the former trainer, was fired, and part of it was the injuries. But it's just this team is jinxed. I'm convinced they're just jinxed. This is an off-season workout. And Rafaël Harvey-Pinard breaks his leg. Kirby Dach, what looks like a routine check into the boards, busts up his knees out the second game into the season. It's like I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of a jinx on this team when it comes to injuries.
Yeah, and it seems like Nick Suzuki is the only one that's able to avoid it.
Exactly. It makes it even more remarkable what Suzuki's been able to do.
So maybe he should be giving a talk in the training camp on how to avoid getting injured.
It's bad. Suzuki. Nick Suzuki does everything he can to keep his body ready to play, like just about every player in the NHL does. But it's just one slap shot off the foot. Look at Shea Weber, that slap shot he took off the foot that broke his foot, which led to all the other problems that he had. Brendan Gallagher slap shots off the hand, breaking his hand. It's guys do everything they can to keep their bodies in shape and ready to go. And unfortunately, it's Rafaël Harvey-Pinard's on the ice in the summer, getting in shape for the season to start, right? And freak accident, breaks his leg, and now out for 4 months. So again, I really feel for him. It's got to be a really tough day for him.
Yeah, and you got to wonder at this point, because he didn't even, before he got injured last year, he didn't have the best of seasons, especially compared to the season before he had, where he was shooting the puck, I think, at like 35% scoring rate or something crazy. So you really got to feel for him. But when one door closes, another one opens for someone else in the NHL. Sure. So we'll see. It's kind of game on now. That not that he was guaranteed a spot out of training camp, but that's one less person to compete with for a spot on the roster. So game on for the young guys and the young prospects looking to make a splash on this team. Yeah,
I sort of had Harvey slotted in as a fourth liner. Him and Mike Pezzetta rotating in and out as the fourth guy, with Evans and Armia on that line. But yeah, so now we've got coming to training camp. There's a spot. There's a spot to start the season, and a fourth line spot, and there'll be a good competition for it. There's some young guys that will be coming to camp, and Florian Jackai, a guy that the development camp said, I want to make this team coming into camp. And when you think about a guy who might fit in on a fourth line, know if he'll make the team, but I think he'll be given every opportunity to make it. And I'm sure he's looking at this, as you say, one door closes, another one opens, and it's all about taking advantage of your opportunities. And we saw that with Jaden Struble last season when Jordan Harris was hurt, and Jaden Struble came in and played. He wasn't even supposed to play when he went on that California trip. He was brought on the trip just to get a taste of the NHL and practice with the guys, and Jordan Harris gets hurt, and Jaden Struble comes in, and they couldn't take him out of the lineup afterwards. So Jack and a few of the other young guys that are going into training camp now, realizing that there's going to be a spot open that wasn't open until today.
Yep. And you know what? It's kind of the team's mentality now that, you're seeing it more often than not, is players forcing their way into the lineup, players forcing their way staying with the big club. That's what, like you just said, what Jaden Struble did. It's what Joshua Roy did before he got injured. It's a lot of these Arbor Jackai, he did that 2 years ago. A lot of these guys are forcing their way into the lineup, and that really is an encouraging sign, for culture-wise, but also just, you want these guys to go out there every night and compete, and you can't do that if you're not competing for your life in the NHL. Because if you're going to compete, you want them to be comfortably uncomfortable. You don't want them always looking over their shoulder, if I make a mistake, there goes my spot. But you want a certain level of internal competition to push each other. And I think it's a good thing for the Canadians that this is happening.
Yeah, and another guy this can open up a spot for possibly is Emil Heineman. He had a good training camp last year, and then he had injury issues in Laval. He had a concussion. He only played 48 games, but he had 15 goals. And if you remember back to the start of training camp last season, he started on the number one line with Suzuki and Caulfield. And that just shows you how much the Canadians thought about him and how much of an opportunity they wanted to give him to possibly make the team. And, every time I've watched him play, whether it was in with the Canadians or a couple times I've seen him play in Laval, he's an impressive player. 6 foot, 202 pounds, only 22 years old. He was a second-round pick by Florida. He's a good hockey player. He's a big body too, which is something the Canadians can use. So it's going to be interesting to see another guy coming in with an opportunity to, and I'm sure he has his eye in that spot also. So competition is always good. We saw it on the Canadians' blue line last season, and we're going to see it at the forward spot coming into training camp this year.
Just one more thing on Emil Heineman is that I remember I went to a Laval. I don't know if it was considered a playoff game, but it was like a play-in game for the playoffs 2 years ago, and they got smoked 4-0. They looked awful, and there were two players on the ice that I noticed. Only two on Laval in a positive light, which is saying a lot. In a 4-0 loss, which is one of them was Caden Primo. He played to the best of his ability. You score 0 goals, you're not going to win the game, so you can't really pin it on him. He made some great saves in that game. And the other one was Emil Heineman. In a 4-0 loss, for a forward to be noticeable out there, it's a very encouraging sign. So hopefully, I think he came back in the Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah, Toffoli trade with Calgary, and a lot of people thought it was sort of like a throw-in. I mean, the first-round pick was the key to that trade. But after the trade was made, Kent Hughes said he's a guy they wanted. Like, they wanted Heineman as part of that package. And when they acquired Heineman, because he'd been traded a couple of times already since being drafted in 2020, he said, you're not a throw-in here. We wanted you. Like, we told them we want you as part of this package. And again, like I said, at training camp last season, he looked really good at the development camp. He had a good training camp, and you think, as I said, starting him on the number 1 line with Suzuki and Caulfield just showed how much the Canadians wanted to get a really good look at him and what he could do. Good camp. They sent him back to Laval and got injured early. It was like a freak. He collided with a linesman or a referee or something. One of those. Like, again, this team is jinxed when it comes to injuries, and it set him back. But he really impressed me. He's just one of those guys. There's certain guys that just look like a hockey player when you see him on the ice. He's one of those guys when he's just standing on the ice. He's a good skater, good shooter. You can see why Kent Hughes wanted him as part of that package in the Tyler Toffoli trade.
Yeah, and he skates. It's funny. He skates with a purpose. He looks angry when he skates.
Yeah, he's one of those guys you hear him skating. He chews up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, like we said, when one door closes, another one opens for someone else. It's only a good thing. You have to look at it in a positive light. Obviously, not if you're Rafaël Harvey-Pinard, because you could start to ask yourself some serious questions if you're him. He's going to have to work his tail off to get back up the ranks of this team. Unfortunate, but hey, if there's someone who can work hard and knows what hard work is, it's definitely him. So,
and again, I mean, the Canadians, they need size up front. They need more size up front, and no knock on Harvey-Pinard, but he's not a big body, right? And Emil Heineman is, and Florian Jacki is, and they got a couple other guys coming to training camp that might be able to add a little bit more size to the forwards.
So let's move on from this unfortunate incident to something else a little unfortunate. We're not going to spend too much time because we're not a politics podcast, but hey, Michael Pezzetta decided to dip his toes into Quebec politics. And listen, we had this discussion a couple weeks ago, and it got posted on Twitter, and a lot of people disagreed with me, and that's okay. And I am here to say that maybe I was wrong. Maybe the taxes really do have an effect on player recruitment, because Michael Pezzetta just went on Andy Strickland's podcast, and he was complaining about the Quebec taxes, saying they're too high. He doesn't know it's crazy over here. I mean, he's one of us. He's one of the normies, hockey players. They're just like us. But no, he did complain about the taxes and how it's too high and how he feels like he's getting robbed and so on and so forth. Canadians probably weren't too happy about that, but that's the reality of where we live in. And it's funny because, just the other day, the Athletic posted their fan survey. And one of the questions was, it's something along the lines of, do you believe that something should be done to equalize the playing field for teams, not necessarily in Canada, but just teams versus tax-free states? Mm-hmm. So that there's a couple teams there. There's Dallas, both Florida teams, Seattle, and Nashville, I believe. Vegas as well. Yeah. So there's six teams that are in tax havens, essentially, and does it pose an unfair advantage? Should the NHL do anything to rectify that, or is it fine as is?
Yeah, well,
question.
The thing with Michael Pezzetta, he's one of my favorite guys in the Canadians to talk to for two reasons. One, he's just a great guy. And two, he's very honest when you ask him questions. And he was asked the question on that podcast about Quebec taxes, and he was honest in his answer. And you're right. I'm sure the Canadians aren't thrilled about the answer he gave, probably a little bit upset, the management people. But he was honest. And like anybody who lives in Quebec complains about Quebec taxes. And here's the guy from Ontario, and he's making, NHL minimum $750,000 US, which is almost $1 million Canadian. That's the minimum for any of us. We'd be doing cartwheels if we ever made that kind of money.
Exactly.
But I watched the podcast or the part about it, and he was smiling. He wasn't raging. He was asked a question, and he said, the first time he got his paycheck when he got up to the NHL, he had a 2-way contract, and he's expecting, and he looked at the thing and wow. And he also mentioned, it's not just taxes. You also have your agent fee and the money the NHL was taking off because of, I forget the term for it now.
Escrow.
Thank you. The escrow money. So, when he got his first paycheck, he was expecting a lot more, and he got a lot less. And I think that's the same as anybody who would come from somewhere else in Canada or North America coming to Canada or coming to Quebec and seeing how much you get taxed. So, Canadians aren't going to be happy. They might have a chat with him, but, as in the media and fans complain, when players always speaking cliches and they give the same answers. Michael Pezzetta is refreshing. He doesn't do, you ask him a question about anything, and he's very, very honest in the answers he gives. And I've always admired him for that. And again, he's just a great guy. His teammates love him, and he's a really easy guy to chat with. And he was asked a question, and he gave an honest answer. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But, Kent Hughes, I asked him the question the last news conference he had. If you could explain, like I said, the money that Steven Stamkos is getting in Nashville, is it $8 million a year or whatever, how much more is he taking home in Nashville than he would take home in, say, Montreal or another place? And Hughes didn't really answer the question. He said, there's a lot of different things that go into it and tax, but he said, tax situation here isn't as big a deal as some people make it out to be. And if you have a good accountant, most NHL players do, there's tax loopholes and whatnot, but it's definitely a factor. I mean, there's loopholes to get around paying the taxes, but it's a lot easier if you just don't pay the taxes, right? This money just stays in your bank. You need to hire an accountant to try and figure out ways to get around Quebec taxes. So there's no doubt that it's an issue. I remember when Radulov, when he left for Dallas, and the talk was, he turned down the exact same offer that Bergevin gave him to go to Dallas. And I heard a very reliable source told me that that's true. He did get the exact same offer, but Radulov wanted 1 more year from the Canadians. I think it was 5 years Dallas gave him, and 4. He wanted 1 more year from the Canadians at the same salary to make up for the taxes that he would pay in Montreal. So in other words, basically you lose roughly a year's salary playing here for the taxes. And Bergevin didn't want to give him the other year, and that's why he left for Dallas. So it is an issue. And when Kent Hughes said it's not that big a deal, he's right. It's maybe not that big a deal, but when he was an agent, I'm sure he was telling his players it can be a pretty big deal. And, the NHL, in my opinion, they should do something to level the playing field, because it is really unfair. You get teams like Vegas and now look at Nashville going out, and Jonathan Marchessault went to Nashville. Kent Hughes tried to get him here, was offering him more money than what he would get in Nashville. But let's say you offered him $1 million a year more than what he get in Nashville. He's probably still taking home more in Nashville, making $1 million a year less than after taxes and whatnot. So it is an issue. And as I said, Michael Pezzetta was asked the question. Summertime, you said dog days of summer. They got him on a podcast. They asked him a question, and he gave him an honest answer. So I hope moving forward, this doesn't make Michael Pezzetta stop being honest when he gives answers.
Yeah.
Under the previous Canadiens regime, I'm certain that would have been the case. He probably would have been read the Riot Act. But, since Chantal Machabie took over media relations, that she's told guys to be themselves and not be afraid to be themselves. I think this was just a case of Michael Pezzetta being himself and saying something that I'm sure Canadiens management wishes he didn't say. It obviously doesn't help when you're trying to recruit players and you have a player on the team saying that, taxes are a big deal. But again, it is. I mean, Montreal, a lot of different places. And as we mentioned, I think in previous podcasts, it's not just the places that are tax-free. It's also the climate where they're tax-free.
Yes.
Florida and Dallas and all these places. Plus, you don't have the big spotlight that you have in a Canadian market. So those teams have an advantage when it comes to getting free agents and keeping guys. I mean, it's not a shock that, Stamkos went from one non-tax state to another non-tax state.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a shock.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like you said. I feel like teams. Let's just say, Montreal signs player X, but player X, whoever this player was hesitant at first. You have, hey Nick, can you mind giving Mr. X a call and just tell him, don't worry about it. Everyone on the team's got the same accountant, and he's willing to play ball with you. Don't worry about it. And I feel Listen, I mean, whatever the accountant charges, and the loss in taxes, money is money. Some people are in it for different reasons, and that's respect to them. They've earned that right. But hey, I think that opened my eyes to something, and that maybe the NHL should do something to level the playing field, or maybe there should be a soft cap like in the NBA, which I don't really understand how it works.
Yeah, I understand how the NHL cap works sometimes also.
But I also don't think that one of the options on the Athletic poll was I'd like to see no salary cap, MLB style. Yeah. I don't think that would work. I mean, hey, it would be great for the Canadians, the New York Rangers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's tough. That's
back in the day when there's no salary cap, the Rangers were team payroll was higher than, this is a long time ago, higher than what the cap is now. Back when there was no salary cap, but I had an agent tell me a while ago, a couple of years ago, if a player's paying more than it was 30-something% tax, they need to get another agent or another accountant. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a lot easier if you just don't pay the taxes at all, rather than having some guy work out ways that you avoid paying the taxes.
Yeah. So, hey, listen, NHL players, they're just like us. And I'm sure, hey, you know what I would love?
Quebec taxes. No,
you know what I would love
if you didn't have team doctors to take care of them, you'd be complaining about Quebec hospital situation also, right? Like everybody else, and traffic and all the other stuff they all complain about.
You know what I would love to see? The first time that Michael Pezzetta got his paycheck, and it was Christmas time, and he paid off to his QPP cap, and he gets like an extra, for me, it's an extra $200 on my paycheck. Yeah. I remember the first time I paid the cap. I paid to the cap. I called my uncle right away, got him on the phone, and I go, Steve, what's going on? They overgave me money. I'm gonna owe money. Yeah. He started dying of laughter. He goes, no, you paid the QPP cap. It's an extra little bump in your Christmas time salary now. Yeah. So I wonder if he got a little excited when he paid to the cap.
Well, Pezzetta also said he says, I'm still making good money. He wasn't bitching and whining. He was just stating a fact. I remember it was Ellis Valentine. I remember I interviewed Ellis Valentine, the former Expos player, years ago when he was in Montreal. And he was talking about when he got traded to the Mets. And this was before, direct deposit and all that stuff. And he actually got a paycheck. So he got his paycheck, the first paycheck he got from the Mets, and he looked at it and he was afraid to cash it because it was so much more than what he got when he was at the Expos. And he didn't cash it. He called his agent and said, they screwed up my pay. Like, I don't know what to do. They gave me like an extra $100,000 or whatever on my paycheck. And like, if I cash it, am I going to have to pay them back? And the agent was laughing. He says, no, you're not paying Quebec taxes. It's a long history of professional athletes and complaining about Quebec. And it's not just athletes. It's, doctors or people making good money, people not making great money complain about Quebec taxes too. So it's part of life here. It's one of the things that Canadians have to deal with. But that's why it's so important now for Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes. They're trying to build that team culture and make Montreal a fun place to play. We got a coach who plays an offensive style. We got a young group. We got a young captain who's the leader of the group. We got a bunch of guys around the same age. It's fun to play. When things are going good with the Canadians, it's a fantastic place to play, right? So if you're winning and you're going to the playoffs and you're competing for the cup every year and people worship Canadians players here, Mitch Marner got in trouble for being honest a little while ago when he said in Toronto they treat us like God. Well, they do. And in Montreal, people treat the Canadians players like gods. I mean, you see the fans lined up outside the Bell Center waiting for autographs, outside Brossard practice rink. Even at the development camp, they're lined up outside there. So when things are going good in Montreal or Toronto or some of these other markets, it's a great place to play. If you want to be somewhere where people care about hockey, where people are passionate about hockey, where people want to know everything about you and they you sign autographs and all that. So some players don't want that. But if you enjoy that and that's something that you can live with, it can be a fun place to play. And Cole Caulfield's realized that, and Slavkovsky's realized that. Despite the ups and downs they went through, they signed long-term here. They could have gone somewhere else. They could have played out their options or whatever, or become restricted or unrestricted free agents and gone somewhere else. It was tax-free, but they like what's happening in Montreal. They like the group here, and that's what they're trying to do. That's part of this. A big part of this rebuilding process is making Montreal a market where players want to come and play. And Jonathan Marchessault was interested in coming here, but again, Kent Hughes wasn't going to give him the longer term. And even if he did give him more money on a shorter term, at the end of the day, he's probably taking home the same amount or more by playing in Nashville where there's no state tax.
Well, and hey, like I said, hockey players, if you ever wanted to feel on the same level playing field as hockey players, they complain about the same things as us.
Exactly.
So, you know, they might just be a little more skilled than you, but
yeah,
you're on the same level at some level. We are very similar.
And a guy like Pezzetta, I mean, $750,000 is a lot of money for the normal person. It's not a lot of money for a professional athlete. So, you know, a guy like Nick Suzuki is making $8 million, right? And let's say he was paying 50% tax. I'm sure he's not because he has a good agent. But let's say he was. Okay, so he's taking home $4 million, right? I don't know how much your lifestyle really changes taking home $6 million a year or $4 million a year. I think you can still basically do whatever you want to do and buy more or less whatever you want to buy. But if you're making $750,000 and you're taking home $350 as opposed to $500, I think that does change your lifestyle.
Yeah, that does.
That does. Yeah. That has more of an impact. So for a guy like Pezzetta making the NHL minimum, even though he's not paying as much money in taxes as a guy like Caulfield or Suzuki, he feels it more. I think, you know, it's an extra $100,000 is a lot of money to him, whereas an extra $100,000 to a Nick Suzuki or a guy making $8 million a year is like, you know, maybe $20 to you and I, right?
Yeah, exactly. So from one, so that's one issue, we'll call it, you know, the NHL will have to deal with maybe come to the next CBA negotiations. One thing another thing I found interesting from one of the questions of this poll is that they're doing the what is it called in English? Wow, I don't even know what it's called in English, but I know what it's called in French. The Carré d'As, the 4-team tournament that's happening in January or February. Best on best. Personally, I'm a little excited for it because we haven't seen best on best international hockey in a very, very long time. I'm excited for it. But the interesting thing about it is that, you know, we've spoken about this probably last summer or during a Christmas break at some point. But because Pierre LeBrun bangs this drum all the time, is that for this tournament, they're going on a 3-point system. Yeah. 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime/shootout win, 1 point for an overtime loss, or I believe shootout loss as well, and then 0 for a regulation loss. Is this trial and error for the NHL? Like, because the NHL is running this tournament. So is this going to be kind of trial, like, let's see how this works, and maybe we'll change our own system?
I don't think they will. I think they've done it because this is a short tournament and it makes it easier to avoid ties or whatever in the standings. Gary Bettman likes the loser, likes the way it is because it keeps more teams in the playoff hunt. You know, the loser point and that's what they want. They want more teams to be in the playoff hunt longer because that means more people go to the rink, more people buy tickets, their teams aren't out of it early. So I agree it should be done. But I don't think it ever will because I think Bettman, it's all about his job is to make money for the owners, right? That's his number one, number two, number three, number four priority. And by doing that, by keeping more teams in the playoff hunt, which the loser point does, you have more playoff races and more teams still in it. So it's I don't see the NHL change that. I think they put it in because it's a short tournament and it'll make it easier to decide who the two teams are that are going to go to the final. The other cool thing about that Four Nations tournament, we're going to get games in Montreal too, which will be fun.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
First part of the tournament's in Montreal, and then they shift to Boston afterwards.
But you know what? It's like, obviously, this isn't a direct correlation because that would be, I mean, if it was, Gary Bettman would have been fired. So, but you look at the other 3 of the big 4 leagues. The NHL is obviously the little brother to the 3 other leagues. Those leagues, for those who don't know, being the NFL, NBA, and MLB. The NHL has the least amount of money. Actually, NHL, there was I saw a graph somewhere, or maybe it was on a different podcast. They were talking about, they were playing in an elimination game and they were saying, which league do professional athletes on average make the least in? And the NHL was number 1 or last, depending on how you're looking at it. But the other leagues, they seem to be doing fine in their playoff races and whatnot, and they don't have a point system. It's wins, losses, win percentage. You look at the NBA, you lose in overtime, that's a loss. In the NFL, you lose in overtime, that's a loss. The MLB, you lose in extras, That's a loss.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I mean, some games in the NHL are worth 2 points, and some games are worth 3 points, right? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
look at it that way, and it's but again, it keeps players around. You know, we talk about Gary Bettman possibly, getting fired. That's never going to happen. I mean, Gary Bettman. Remember Donald Trump? I think it was said I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still vote for me. Gary Bettman could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, and the NHL owners would still vote for him because he got them a hard salary cap. He locked out the players how many times to do it? He got it for them. And there's no, they're the one league that has it, and they're the salaries. Alan Walsh, the agent, keeps tweeting all the time how much salaries in other leagues have gone up and how much the NHL has. And as I mentioned before, the Rangers 15 years ago, their team payroll was more than what the top team payroll is now. So Gary Bettman has a job for life because he brought in the hard salary cap for the owners. He locked out the players. He took hockey away from the fans. He was ruthless in doing it.
Yeah,
but he got it done, and he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I'd still try to figure that one out, but he did. He got the owners what they wanted, and they love him. So he's, Gary, I'm not sure how old he is now. He's up there, but he's got that job until he decides he doesn't want it anymore.
It's just, to me, it's just really unbelievable because not to get too deep into this, it's just that it's clearly the smallest league of the four, and people can make the argument. People have made the argument that oh well, he's done so well for the league. He was the first one to put a professional team in Vegas. He was of all the four pro leagues. And he was, look how much the NHL has grown. And I just personally, I'm of the stance of the NHL was going to grow naturally either way, because that's how sports work. They just grow naturally. I think I think he's hindered the growth a little bit, but that's maybe a discussion.
Well, I mean, it's that old boys club, right, that runs the NHL, and Bettman's the head of it, right? I mean, for me, if I was an NHL owner, I think it would be a good time to bring in a younger guy, get some fresh blood, some fresh ideas, some new ideas, a new way of looking at things. Look at how some of the things have backfired on Bettman, the banning the pride tape before games for warm-ups and stuff like that old sort of school mentality. To me, it would be better for the league if they, thank you, Gary Bettman, you're in the Hall, we put you in the Hall of Fame, even though you took hockey away from fans, I don't know how many times with lockouts. Thanks for everything. Here's a golden handshake. We're moving on. We're bringing in some younger person. So like what the Democrats have done, right? Bringing Biden and bringing in Kamala Harris. I think it would be good for hockey to get some fresh blood running it. But again, it's until Gary Bettman decides he doesn't want to do it anymore, he's going to have that job.
It's just crazy to me because you could see, like, I understand. So he got the hard salary cap. He got it for the owners. That is done, and that will not go away.
No, that's not going away. No.
And it won't, no matter who comes in. It doesn't matter. It's not going to go away. Yeah. But I don't know how the owners could look at the other four leagues and just be okay with the level of growth that those four leagues have had, and look at the NHL and the level of growth it has had. A lot of it has to do
with the players' associations too, right? Like the NHLPA, to Gary Bettman's credit, he's a smart guy, right? Gary Bettman,
of course,
really smart guy, a New York lawyer, and that he knows that every time he locks out the players, they're going to cave, right? Baseball learned that every time they lock out the players, they're not going to cave, right? They've learned their lessons, the collusion and everything the baseball union is so strong. Cost the Expos, right? In 1994, the players said, okay, we're not coming back. After they locked them up. So it's the players, the NHLPA has cracked every time Gary Bettman has locked them out and basically given them what they want. So not only, talking about Michael Pezzetta and talking about taxes and escrow, not only did Gary Bettman get a hard cap, he also got the players to pay escrow. Like how any union would agree to that? Okay, you're going to cap what we can make. Oh, and by the way, we're going to give you back 25% of our salary every year in case you guys don't make enough money. Like, wow. But the membership voted for that, right? So a union is only as strong as its members. So if the members are going to vote to not only give the owners a hard cap, but also agree to give back part of their salary in case the owners don't make enough money, like to me, like, wow, that's, excuse me, when you compare that to what the baseball players Now, every time the owners have locked out the baseball players, the owners have lost. Every time the NHL owners have lost out the players, they've not only won, they've won big time.
Yeah, it's it's crazy to me whenever it's always happens during the off season of the NHL and NBA. And you know what? I don't think any sport will get, other than the NBA, will get to that level of, for the lack of a better term, not scrubs, but the equivalent of third line guys in the NHL making what they call in sports FU money. I'm not going to say the word, there's a family show, but FU money. You got bench players making $20 million a year in the NBA. The NFL isn't even
players, right? They're practice players.
That's it.
I mean, an NBA team has 10 players because they have to practice, right?
But that's it.
LeBron James' son was given the amount of money he got. I mean, there's a guy who averaged 4 points a game in college or something. Got drafted because he's LeBron's son, and here's a multi-million-dollar contract, even though you'll probably never play, or you might play like 2 minutes a game.
Exactly. So, the NHL will never get to that. And frankly, the NFL, people think because it's the NFL, it's like that. It's not like that. There are a ton of players on league minimums. The only players making FU money are the best at their position, and that's quarterback, wide receiver, and lineman.
And their contracts aren't guaranteed.
Exactly.
They're not guaranteed. Another thing, you're talking about a union sort of caving, comparing baseball to football. The most violent sport there is. I don't know if you've watched that new Netflix series on receivers after the quarterback one. And the camera angles I have from field level, you always knew football was such a violent, crazy sport. But when you see some of these camera angles and these hits these guys take, it's like, oh my God. And that's the sport where the contracts aren't guaranteed.
Exactly.
I mean, they've tried to get around it now with the huge signing bonus money, right? And a lot of money up front. But, a guy like Rafaël Harvey-Pinard who breaks his leg, he comes back from the broken leg. Okay, you're cut.
No, but that's it. It's so
your contract's no good anymore.
The NFL isn't even like that, but to see, bench players in the NBA making more than Connor McDavid, just from an optics standpoint, you look like a Mickey Mouse league. That's just what it looks like, And
I mean,
it's got to change.
Soccer has that rule, designated player rule.
Yep.
I mean, that would make sense for something for hockey. You get 2 designated players on your team.
Yeah.
They don't count against the cap, or only 50% of their salary or something counts against the cap. And it would allow teams to keep players that otherwise lose to another market, right? You draft a kid, you develop him, you do everything, and then he gets to be all right, see you, I'm out of here. You can't afford to keep him anymore. So to me, that would make sense to have, you have your cap, you have two designated players on each NHL team, or 3, or whatever the number they come up with, and those salaries don't count against, or only a percentage, like 50% of it counts against the cap. But again, that won't happen, I don't think, because if the players wanted it, Gary Bettman, and if they're willing to get locked out for it, Gary Bettman would just leave them locked out and say they're going to cave. And
exactly.
They will. I mean, from history says that they will.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy to me that people can. Anyways, just to wrap this whole.
He also says something to hockey players. The hockey players want to play, right?
Yeah,
they want to play. So they're locked out. They're at home. They want to play. They want to come back. But to them, it's admirable that that's the attitude they have. But it's not smart business sense when they're willing to give up a hard cap and escrow. It's just like a double whammy.
Well, that's it. You gotta play ball when it comes to these things, and you gotta protect your chicken.
Yeah.
Anyways, just to put a bow on this, it's just, the NHL. Gary Bettman has locked out the NHL 3 times.
Yeah.
And to say just that
for a full season, the only sport to ever lose a full season.
There you go. So
he took hockey away from fans for a full year, and somehow still ended up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Like every other league has been able to work around or negotiate, but he rules with a heavy hand, and he has the power. He has the owners behind him, and he doesn't care if there's no hockey for a year. He's ruthless. He doesn't care. There won't be hockey for a year. Too bad. Fans, too bad. Players, too bad. But we're going to get the owners a hard cap.
And I remember the last lockout, and it was just, and I was, really, that's at the point where I was 15, I think.
Yeah.
So I really thought that fans were like the big, we were the boss. We were the boss, and we made the sport, and all those cliches. Yeah. When Gary Bettman started, pandering to fans after the deal was signed, even me as a 15-year-old,
Yeah.
I was ready. I threw up in my mouth watching him speak. It's anyways.
He's ruthless. That's why the owners love him. He's and companies need, or want at the top level, they want that ruthless guy who's going to get them what they want. Gary Bettman's done it. And taking hockey away from the fans, okay, no problem.
Two other guys that are ruthless when they need to be, you and I. Stu, keep enjoying your vacation. Keep getting out there, and we'll talk next week.
All right, take care.
That was Stu Cowan. I'm Matt Ohayon. That's it for me. Tony's back on Monday. We'll see you. We'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.